back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Tripoli, Libya. So this is now the description of this compound in Sorman, where NATO was trying to assassinate al-Khweldi al-Hamedi, the guy in the photograph once again with President Nasser of Egypt some years ago. The NATO bombers ended up killing 10 civilians, mainly women, and 4 very young children, 1 4, 1 4, 1 6, as well as the Sudanese cook, a black African guest worker who had been working for the family for quite a while, and his wife. So a total of 10 people killed. The allegation was that there were military uses. This is absolutely absurd. There were rather a petting farm similar to what Gaddafi had. As a matter of fact, a number of the Gaddafi sites have these petting farms. And at the one that I should have mentioned, that at the one with the reception room for Gaddafi, I believe it was 3 of his grandchildren were killed, along with Saif el-Arab, if I have it right now. Gaddafi has 2 sons named Saif, so don't be confused. One, I believe, Saif el-Arab, who was killed, the Saif means the shield. So the shield of the Arabs, unfortunately, died in this NATO attack, but Saif el-Islam, the shield of Islam, I believe this is the guy that you've seen more on television. He was studying in California when the war began, and he's got a very short haircut, like a very extreme crew cut, almost a baldy. That he has survived, and he is, I think, politically the more active of the children of Gaddafi. One or two other interesting things about this attack on the compound in Sorman. How did NATO acquire the targets? Well, it seems to be this. From what I've been able to gather, this is partly fragmentary and partly just talking to people who were there. They believed that what it was that NATO agents, some kind of presence of people working for NATO, killers in other words, traitors if they're from Libya, climbed into a microwave tower, an FM or microwave relay tower nearby, and painted the roof of some of these buildings with a laser, and that the 8-part device homed in on that laser paint spot that was put on the roof. And according to these Libyan sources, the one of the ways in which information was relayed was by way of Twitter. Isn't that delightful? Think of all the wonderful uses of the social media. Well, one use of the social media is that NATO butchers and NATO killers and traitors, perhaps operating here in Libya, use that method in order to select their victims and to kill people. So there's nothing sadder than the wanton destruction of this. And again, you go and you see the rubble, the packages of spaghetti, the plastic bottles of mineral water, and on and on. The broken glass. One part of the Sorman compound was obviously the library. So here were books, pages of books strewn around on the ground. Absolute vandalism is probably the worst thing to happen in North Africa since the Vandals arrived here. And this is, of course, where the Vandals permanently stopped and set up shop. So the Vandals are back, and their name is NATO. So these are some of the impressions. Now, a few other impressions. I happened to be on the dock when a boatload of refugees arrived here in Tripoli. Now, where were they coming from? These were refugees who were fleeing the wonderful paradise of democracy, which has been created by the Al-Qaeda guerrilla forces of NATO in the area of Benghazi, Derna, Tobruk. So these people were fleeing from that. The press were there. Yeah, there was some press. I talked to Ernesto Londoño, I believe, the correspondent of the Washington Post. Another guy was the correspondent of the Associated Press. I talked to Telesur. They're actually quite decent. Telesur, right? That would be the Chavez, pro-Chavez television from Venezuela. There's also Phoenix Television from Hong Kong, which is not the same as CCTV, but the Phoenix people say that they're an independent channel that operates in most of China, and that they're independent from the government. So that the correspondent for them also seemed to be a fairly reasonable person. There was also a correspondent, and maybe I'll find the name here, and maybe I won't. Correspondent for the first program of French national television. And all we can need to say really about these correspondents is that most of the Western correspondents understand themselves to be simply auxiliaries in the aggression against Libya. They're just people who are here to help along. And there are stories circulating that Western correspondents go out in various tours on the press bus. These are tours conducted by Musa Ibrahim. You've seen him on television if you watched any of this stuff. Musa Ibrahim is a young, actually rather charismatic guy. He is the spokesman for the government. He's also the information minister. Again, you've seen him expressing, I think, justified outrage and indignation at the crimes of NATO. So he takes these correspondents out. Yesterday, the Western media was saying, "Oh, there's a place 70 kilometers west," pretty much where I was a couple of days before. 70 kilometers west of Tripoli, the rebels have come in and they're taking over the city. So he organized a press bus to go out there and to show these press trollops that it was a lie. But what these press characters seem to do is they take their pocket devices and they try to feed the coordinates, right, the GPS coordinates for things that they see to the NATO flying bombers overhead. And it's often been the case that once the press has left, maybe the next day, some bombs have come down at their destination or elsewhere along the way. Let me just say that these press characters are of a very unstable psychological equilibrium, and that any challenge to their idiotic belief structure is capable of creating something that looks very much like an apoplectic fit or a nervous breakdown or something like this. So a little needling can go a long way in neutralizing some of these characters. But if if you've seen Musa Ibrahim, you've seen somebody I think who's doing an excellent job in putting forth the case of the Libyan government as much as he can. Now, therefore, these press people, the press scrum, I guess we might call it, they showed up on the dock here when the passenger boat carrying these refugees came in, and they were not interested in reporting on what was going on. They're rather interested in checking up on who's there, trying to cross-examine you, trying to pry into your personal affairs. How did you get here? And all the rest of this stuff. How much are you paying for your hotel room? And on and on and on. Rather, what they tried to do was a woman came off the boat. She was wearing the full, I guess, hijab, practically a burqa, but not quite. And they wanted to cross-examine her. A lot of people got off the boat. They didn't want to speak, but the one who was covered up, they wanted to show her, as if to say that it's the fundamentalists coming to Gaddafi. It's actually the reverse. The fundamentalists are in Benghazi, and Gaddafi is actually a secular government, quite moderate, with a lot of very moderate people in it. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio.